outside LA, and welcome to our Sunday morning sitting group. And today I'm speaking to you from Venice, from the unceded lands of the Tongva, well, to the north, the Chumash, and Tongva, sometimes called Keys, indigenous people who were the custodians of this land for thousands of years, certainly millennia before we ever got here. And yeah, I want to welcome you. For those of you who might be new to the group, we divide it roughly into thirds. Like first we do approximately a 30-minute meditation, and then we have some teachings, and then we have some time for conversation and dialogue together, which is actually my favorite part. And then there's a 10-minute break where you don't turn off your Zoom, and then Anissa will help everybody get into breakout groups, small groups, if you can stay. It's really a nice way to connect with each other and to talk over what's happening in your practice, or and learn from each other. One great Tibetan meditation teacher used to say, that the Sangha, the community, was a way to learn from each other's confusion. And I always wondered, like, what's the point? We're just sharing our confusion. But actually, there's a great point, because everybody's confusion is usually a little bit different. And the wisdom comes from acknowledging it. And in the moment that you acknowledge it and are mindful of it, guess what? You're not really that confused anymore. So I encourage you to stay for breakout group if you can. So let's sit together. We're super small group this morning, I see. I don't know if that's because of the Super Bowl, but I welcome you from wherever you are. And I do a little bit of guidance for the meditation. Feel free, you can turn off your cameras while you meditate, but I do love to see your faces afterwards if you're willing. And yeah, I'll do a little bit of guidance and lots of silence. And this morning, in honor of, this week being Valentine's Day, and a day when there's a lot of focus on romantic love, I think it would be good to do a little bit of metta meditation, loving kindness meditation, the love that really belongs to each one of us and has nothing to do with romantic love. Really, it's a different kind of love, a friendly, more agape kind of love. For those of you who know that word, it's more like maybe sister and brother, or friendship. And in this case, it's the love that we naturally feel when our consciousness is not restricted to our personal worries and preoccupations and busyness and so forth. So let's sit together. Find a posture that is, some frame that's comfortable for your body. And when I ring the bell, just listen to the sound of the bell all the way to its vanishing point. Taking a deep breath in and then releasing that breath. Just relaxing into being here. And once again, a deep, intentional breath in and out, releasing any tension that may be there. And one more time. And just allowing the breath to flow at its own natural rhythm. Just letting the body relax, the shoulders lower. I'd like to begin with the practice I call the jelly roll. Engaging the imagination to invite some people to, it's a kind of visualization, but if your mind isn't so good at picturing things, you can just sense them around you. But to invite some beings who care about you and maybe they love you even, but they certainly have fondness and affection for you. Just invite them to be in a semicircle around you, sitting, standing, whatever feels most natural. And if you're wondering who to invite, actually, it's very simple. Just invite the people, the pets, whoever it might be, who, when something good happens to you, they feel glad. These are folks who take pleasure in your good fortune, whatever it might be, big or little. And feel free to include people who may have passed away, people who inspire you that you may never have actually even met. And when you have one or two or a few more around you, just taking a moment to look at them, and to realize that you are loved, that there is warmth and affection here for you. And now, one by one, look each one in the eye. Noticing the kindness or the warmth in their gaze, in their regard for you, and simply receiving it, taking it in. And taking your time, connect with each person, eyeball to eyeball, and noticing how it is for you to receive their warmth and friendliness. And when your attention wanders away, just gently bringing it back. Noticing any feelings of awkwardness or resistance that may be present as you take in this affection and even love. Their kind attention is a form of love. And then when you're ready, one by one, offer your appreciation for their presence in your life or in your circle. Again, making eye contact with each one. Maybe offering a little bow or a hug, whatever feels right to you. And when you're ready, allowing the whole circle to just dissolve and melt into your heart. And if you have a loving kindness practice, you can do that. Feel free to just do that practice the way you like. Or just offering these gentle, almost whispered phrases to yourself silently. May I be safe and protected from inner and outer harm. May I live with the ease of an open heart. May I be truly happy and deeply peaceful. Place a hand on your heart that helps you stay present. May I be well. May my heart be steady through the ups and downs of life. May I have the resources I need, inner and outer resources. May I stay present with my life just as it is. And may I love myself completely, just the way I am. Or just offering these simple phrases to help you stay with the feeling of metta, or the intention to feel if it's just not a moment when you're connected to feelings of warmth or friendliness. Each phrase plants that seed of intention. May I be safe. May I be happy. May I be well. May I live with kindness and ease. And depending on how it is for you today, you can just drop those simple phrases into your heart. Or you can call to mind a loved one and offer your friendly wishes to them. Calling to mind a friend or someone who's been helpful to you in this life. Whatever phrases seem right for that person, but basically, may you be safe. May you be happy. May you be well. May you live with kindness and ease. You can call to mind someone who might need some love and support right now. Just sending them your metta, your loving kindness in whatever way feels right for them. And then inviting maybe a difficult part of yourself that you find hard to accept or even to love or even accept, and offering some kindness, a little tenderness for that unwanted and vulnerable part of you. And then opening your heart as wide as you can, offering friendly wishes to all beings everywhere, all those in existence, all those who may have passed away, all those born and yet to be born. May all beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all beings experience happiness and know the causes of happiness. So last week, Thomas taught about equanimity and the worldly winds, and um, and so this week I thought I would just talk about the Four Noble Truths in equanimity. And we've done a loving kindness meditation, and there's lots to say about love and kindness too. Mainly, I want to say that no matter what you were feeling during that meditation, what's most important is the intention to open our hearts, the intention to strengthen our capacity to offer and receive love. Because sometimes it's easier to offer it than to receive it, maybe many times. Um, and and I want to come back to this very basic teaching of the Buddha, that really all the rest of the teachings emerge from this. And I think our capacity to love has to do with how we experience and react to our own unhappiness or suffering when it comes. Whether we feel we deserve to receive love, are worthy of love, whether we feel we have love to offer and to give to others. Um, I think what's so beautiful about this foundational teaching is that, it's just it's an incredible feedback loop. It's a very self-sustaining, self-supporting teaching. And we can come back to it over and over. I actually just always learn something new because all the parts build on the other parts. I think one of my colleagues said once, I think the Buddha must have been a lawyer. His mind was so organized and systematic. And yeah, but the more we understand the causes, what gets us into trouble and what makes us suffer, really, the more we deeply understand it, then I think that it develops a stronger intention to be free. And the stronger our intention to be free, the wiser and more compassionate our minds and hearts get. So it's, and the clearer we get about this being so important. And then, it's just that's the positive feedback loop, or it's called, I think, a virtuous cycle. So, just to very quickly recap the Four Noble Truths for some of you who may not be so familiar with the Buddhist teachings that are the support for mindfulness practice and loving kindness practice and compassion and all of these things. The first, and they're called noble truths because they free our hearts. And Stephen Batchelor calls them practices or actions or activities, which is actually, I think, really accurate. instead of some, what I've always loved about Buddhist practice is there's no revealed doctrine that's the truth that you have to believe, right? It's all about discovering for yourself. Uh, and so I like his reframe of calling them activities. And he says, the first truth, the Buddha said, excuse me, not Stephen and not I, the Buddha said, he said, life is suffering. And lots of times people get down on Buddhism and they go, oh, it's about, it's gloomy, it's all about suffering. But actually, it's not. It's about how to be free. In fact, the Buddha said the entire brilliant art of all the Buddhist teachings, the whole system in every tradition is all about um, suffering and what ends suffering. And you can't end it until you are willing to acknowledge and recognize the forms that it takes in your life and in your heart. So the first one is that life is suffering. We could reframe it as life is subject to change. It's fragile. And we're always having to make adjustments to the changes that happen in our lives, welcome and unwelcome. And so that's the first I call them Buddhist facts of life, the first basic fact of life, right? And that the cause of this suffering is how we struggle with and resist and don't want the things that are challenging that happen to us. Stephen Batchelor is the name. That we're always having to make changes in response to the changing nature of life, and often it's unpleasant. My landlady has decided after 13 years she wants to move back into my house. This is an unpleasant change. I have to adapt to it and accommodate. And that's, and if I cling, wait a minute, I've lived here 13 years, it's full of stuff, I can't move. Well, it's her house. Guess what? It belongs to her. And so the more I cling to what am I going to do? Where's this going to go? And I have to give it all away. And the more my mind clings, and the more I suffer, right? And yeah, more about that later. It's just how the mind struggles, right? It struggles in response to these various challenges. And I'm just talking about an everyday privileged life. I'm not talking about when an earthquake happens, like in Turkey or Syria, and everything is lost and destroyed, and maybe even including your loved ones. But there's, of course, a continuum from immense, incomprehensible tragedies like, natural disasters, like poverty, like racism, like war, to, our lives and just having to have food, shelter, clothing, livelihood, relationships, all the things that we humans need in this life. Anyway, the third fact of life is that this can stop. Change won't stop. Natural disasters and all the different sufferings of the world won't stop. But our reactivity that does not serve us or anybody else can stop. And we can let go, let be, and stop struggling, that a peaceful mind and heart, that this is possible for us. And that's the third one. And the fourth one is, there's an 8-step program. We have a 12-step program that's fantastic when you're working with addictions, and we have an 8-step program that helps us when we're addicted to the ways in which our minds and hearts get restricted to our own, tunnel vision of self. And it's an 8-step program. And I'm not going to go into all the steps now. I've taught them before, and I'm sure we'll go over them again. But the 8 steps are, wise understanding of what this life is and what this self is, and wise intention, the motivation to end suffering, to do something about it, whether it's for ourselves, for our own hearts, or for those around us who need support and love. And wise speech, using our words to cultivate kindness and clarity. wise action, doing things that actually support our kindness and clarity. Wise livelihood, not engaging in, just things that are really unethical, um, you know, supporting finding a healthy way to support ourselves, or relatively healthy. Um, Wise effort, taking good care of our energy so that we can actually do these things. Um, Wise concentration, and that's our meditation practice, developing a more steady and focused mind, attention, capacity for being present. Um, and wise mindfulness, which is the alert, balanced attention that can develop insight. That through the support of concentration and steadiness, and holding something long enough in our awareness that we can learn from it, right? Um, that's how mindfulness and concentration work together. So I thought today I would like to spend some time looking at um, the way in which these things affect our emotions. And I'm just thinking, do I really have time to do all this? I'm always a little bit, uh, too optimistic about how much time we have together. But hold on, my printer isn't working, so I have to find my notes here. Yeah, okay. So first of all, this first fact of life, it really has a lot to do with our emotions. And before Thomas came to teach, I was talking about some really difficult emotions like shame and envy, the emotions that don't get talked about quite so much in the classical teachings, but that, how we usually jump to, when we talk about jealousy or envy, we jump to feeling sympathetic joy, but actually allowing ourselves to focus on emotions that are difficult, or the comparing mind. Um, and so actually a lot of the things that cause us suffering, they come from um, our emotions. And we live in a culture that is really focused on emotional intelligence, knowing how we feel, knowing how to work with emotions, identifying with our emotions. In Spanish, I was just, as you know, teaching and then on a writing retreat in Costa Rica. In Spanish, you don't say, I am angry, completely identifying with that emotion. You say, I have anger, or anger, I have it. It's not all of who I am. I have it right now. And this is, even our language, I think, reinforces the identification with the emotions. And we usually blame whatever unhappiness we're encountering on the conditions outside of ourselves, or on somebody who made me feel bad, right? But actually, how bad we feel a lot of the time is it is up to us. We can actually choose to work with the emotions in a way that, experiencing them in the body, um, and then releasing the story that we've built up about them. Right now, I'm working on a memoir. I wish I hadn't chosen to write a memoir. It's so hard. I didn't want to write a didactic Dharma book. There are so many wonderful Dharma books out there, but writing a memoir is really, really hard, especially if you're a new book writer, which I am. And it's just so torturously slow. Um, but one of the things about it is I'm revisiting, things obviously that happened in my life, and I'm realizing, wow, that's how I saw it. And I lived according to how I saw it. You can just apply this to yourself. And now, at this venerable age that I am at, one doctor said, don't tell everybody your age. It'll make you feel old. but it doesn't. I'm 77 and proud of it. Um, as of Monday, I outlived my dad, who died at 77. So, and I posted about that on my Instagram, but with a very 50s family photo, if you want to take a look. And I'm the one in the middle. I'm the oldest in the family. But when you look back from this vantage point, it's it's so clear. I didn't have to take it that way. I didn't have to make that the basis for so many things that occurred afterwards. It was an unconscious choice. And it reminds me of a calligraphy that I saw years and years ago when my husband, my former husband, and I were traveling on pilgrimage in Big China. And we visited a temple where there was a calligraphy. We were visiting ancient Zen temples, Chan in Chinese tradition. And there was a calligraphy. It showed one of those Guilin mountains, right? Those really, really steep, pointy mountains. And there was this little figure at the top. Of course, it was a man, but I like to think of it as an old woman, a very old person. You could tell because they had a walking stick. They were kind of crunched over. Um, and I guess they had a long beard. So, and it was a beautiful brush painting. And one of the friends that was traveling with us knew Chinese and translated the poem, the words, that the calligraphy that was next to the mountain. And it said, "The view from up here is so clear." And that's true. I've told you my Soto Japanese Zen teacher Koban used to say, um, Zazen meditation, that is, gives you premature wisdom. You're going to have that wisdom when you're old, especially if you try to write a memoir. And if you practice and meditate, I'm telling you, younger people, you don't have to wait. You'll have that wisdom. You can begin to question how you take certain things, whether they become the basis for your maybe avoiding relationship because that person hurt you, or whether they become um, a kind of template for then how you continue to live your life. There's a choice about these things. And this practice of mindfulness and gives us the insight to perceive those choices, to question, this is how it feels to me. This is my story, and I'll stick to it. But maybe it could be a different story. Maybe it's not that story, just maybe. Um, so when we reflect in that way, we see it's actually our emotional reactivity, our take on what happened, that causes the suffering. And that's the second fact of life, right? That's the one. That's the origin of our particular personal suffering. Because the reality is, everybody gets their feelings hurt, everybody hurts other people. I have had to clean up a mess I made by hurting somebody years ago. And I recently had the opportunity to do some amends and clean up that mess. And, when we have the chance to do that, of course, it's something that's kind of a blessing, actually, to when we have a chance to make things right. But um, yeah, that's the origin of our suffering. Is it's my story, and I'll stick to it. Or as I've shared with you, when I used to work as a couples therapist for many years in Cambridge, um, I used to ask them when people would be, in some deep conflict with each other, and they'd get into it right there in the office. And I'd say, hey, would you rather be right, or would you rather be close? Now, there's lots of moments when you'd actually rather be right than be close to the other person. But at least you have to admit it, right? You have to be aware of it, and that's a choice. It's a choice. And the same way, choosing to identify with it is a choice. And one of the ways that we work with the difficult emotions here is to remind ourselves, this is what it feels like to be a person who is angry. This is what it feels like to be a human being who is heartbroken. This is what it feels like to be a human who is afraid. And that way, there's a kind of softening of the personal identification and isolation of being with that painful feeling, and a sense of connecting to all of humanity who has ever felt that way before. So I think, the less we can identify with these emotions in whatever ways, whatever skillful ways, we can learn to do that, the the freer we are. It's that simple. And that shift in identity from being focused on, completely focused on what this means to me, is it a threat, is it going to help me, is it going to hurt me, that agenda that we approach so much of experience with is what restricts consciousness. Um, and it's like that quote from Dogen that I love to teach with, because it's really the way, it's my own practice over these years. Recently, it's when he says, when the self goes forward to meet the myriad things, all phenomena, the self that has these agendas and that has these stories and that has these expectations and these patterns or templates, this is delusion, this is illusion. But when the self steps back and allows experience to teach us, when we can take that backward step and receive moments, receive life, and learn from it, that's awakening. And how do you learn this? Unfortunately, it takes a lot of practice. You learn this through patiently sitting with yourself, watching your mind, learning about your heart over and over again. I was talking with a very accomplished person who wrote a wonderful book, and they were saying how stuck they are in some old stuff with their family, and it came up again, and they've been really depressed and having a rough week, and just generally sort of spiraling right down. And I was saying, we use that expression spiraling it usually means like spiraling down into depression or madness or something unpleasant. um, but actually, this whole this whole spiritual path is a spiral, but it's this kind of spiral, right? It's a spiral up. And the both the frustrating and the cool thing about it is that at each point on the spiral, I mean, you meet the same stuff. You know, basically what this person was saying is, I've been over and over and over this. And why does it have to be happening again? Why does it have to be bothering me so much again? Well, because, I mean, whose stuff is going to be? I mean, it's your stuff. It's what, you know what I mean? It's like, if you're sitting in a meditation retreat, is it their stuff that's going to bother you? No. Or even here, you can look at the Zoom squares. Is it Bernard's stuff that's going to bother you? Is it Adam's or is it Camille's? No, it's yours. I mean, you can have sympathy and empathy and compassion for them, but it's your stuff that's going to get to you. So over and over, right? We meet our stuff, it's our life, it's our issues, but we meet them from a different place with a little more tenderness, maybe a little more awareness. Whoops, I'm getting out of the frame. A little more insight, a little more understanding, a little more patience, a little more energy, a little more, all of the paramis, right? All of the spiritual strengths, they come into play. And it's a spiral that leads us up out of suffering into freedom. So when we talk about acceptance, in this practice, we're not talking about resignation. We're talking about accepting, okay, this is the stuff of my life. I can choose to get totally identified with it, inside it, and take it completely personally and feel horrible. Or I mean, that's an exaggeration. Or, you know, I can certainly begin to notice, oh, wow, I'm prone to this kind of reaction. I'm prone to these kinds of feelings. And I can relax more and say, okay, I can find contentment in this moment. There's something that doesn't hurt right now, no matter how much pain some other part of me might be in, physical, emotional, mental. Um, true happiness comes from developing the trust and confidence to be able to be more accepting, but in a proactive way, in a loving way, in a kind way. You know, the situation that I had to make some amends around, the person received my apology and amends in a really forgiving and kind way. And they're a Buddhist teacher, also a Dharma teacher. And so, it was maybe not that surprising, but it was certainly welcome. And each time we find it within our hearts to forgive ourselves, to trust that we don't have to try to, control and manage life, micromanage everything, that actually things are unfolding in a trustworthy way, that our practice is helping us, with the spiral up to freedom, in all ways. And the more we can trust this, then, the happier we are. So this feels like a lot to share with you this morning. Maybe it's because I didn't teach last week. It's sort of pent up teachings that wanted to come out. But now it's really time for you. If there are people who have questions or reflections from your own practice, and anything that you'd like to share, you can raise your hand with the reaction button at the bottom of your screen, or you can wave wildly because we're a small group, and Anissa or I will see you, if your camera's on, that is. And I encourage, because everyone who shares something or asks a question really just makes it possible for other people to do the same. And I guarantee you, anything you're going through, other people are going through, have gone through.
Somebody has their hand raised, but I can't tell who it is.
Mara, you're here. Hi.
I'm not sure if you were referring to me. I don't know if you saw.
I do see you.
Was it you that I put the little hand up, but it just keeps on disappearing.
Oh, okay. Well, I saw your actual live hand.
Yeah. Okay. I just wanted to make sure it was me that you were. I didn't want to.
And I'm saying hi to you.
Okay. Okay, great. Thank you so much for that. That was really lovely. There was a lot in there. And when you were talking about getting your landlord wanting to move back into your house, I really feel for you. I've had that happen 3 times in my life. And it actually brought me back to a time that where I really struggled. It was about 10 years ago, and I was living in a home. I actually got evicted from my home because they wanted to raise the rent, and I had to move somewhere where the landlord was above me, and it almost felt, I don't know that the word abusive is right, but it was like, if I made any noise, she would bang on the ceiling with a broom. I wasn't allowed to have people over. I wasn't allowed to open the windows. Like, it was really intense. And I was already dealing with a lot of trauma. So I was like, I was in hypervigilance. I was really in a traumatic state while I was there. And I was trying I didn't have a choice. Like I had to live out this year-long lease in this home. And so there wasn't an opportunity to just leave. And I really worked with Metta. So, it also connects with Metta, the Metta practice that we did this morning. Metta's always been a struggle for me. And I actually teach meditation, and it's still a struggle for me.
I know you do. That's why I was saying hi. I know who you are.
Yeah, okay. And so I, no matter how much I do it, and there's times when I find that when I start with myself, it's a lot easier. But if I just dive into somebody else, I mean, the way you did it, it was a beautiful practice. But I still feel like sometimes I get stuck on things, and it brought me back to that specific time where I was trying to work with Metta because I didn't know how to hold that situation because I was so angry. There was so much identification. I was in total victim consciousness. And I'd love to hear more about, I think I've gotten better over the 10 years in many ways. And I feel so much safer in my life now than I did at that point. But for most of my life, I didn't feel safe. And so it's actually new for me to feel safe in the world. And yeah, and I'm still working with it. I'm still really needing to open my heart more, but I'd love to hear just your thoughts on, when you don't have an option to leave a situation, and when there's someone who you're having so much, just struggling with in where hostility and anger and hatred are in full force. How would you suggest to work with that situation?
Yeah, that's a really, really terrible situation, actually. And first of all, and I'm sure you did this, but I would exhaust the practical possibilities for redress because that doesn't sound legal even to treat a tenant in that way. So I guess I would, you know what I mean, before having to take it onto myself, I would explore what are the sort of outer practical resources. But then in terms of, the pain of being filled with anger and hate towards somebody, even if they're being hateful and they quote unquote deserve it, right? Um, it's, and I often say this, when people say, I don't want to offer metta to the difficult person because I don't want them to be happy. I'm furious with them. And I just say to them, well, imagine if they were happy, they wouldn't be acting like this towards you. So that's one way. But mostly, I feel like you have to offer to yourself. And I started with, I call it the jelly roll, just because it's got sweetness inside, potentially, Um, I think it's really hard to just dive into offering metta. I just feel like you need some kind of support to be able to do that, whether it's a practice like that one that we just did, or um, whether it's actually getting somebody to do it with you, whether you have somebody come over and practice together, or if you're not allowed to have people over, I don't know, sneak them in their slippers or something. But to really accept that this is tough and that you can't make it go away. And so you deserve so much compassion, not just metta, but karuna too, compassion, because of the stuckness of that situation. So much compassion. And then I also feel like you need bodily acts. There are all these different acts of, there's mental acts of metta, and there's bodily, physical acts of metta, like making sure you are doing as many sweet things for yourself as you can. Um, if you have I'm a water spirit. So if you have a bathtub to take a bath, or I used to take a shower my first apartment here, I didn't have a bathtub. Um, but to do as many simple, sweet things for yourself as you can, the bodily acts of metta are also really important, whatever is self-soothing. And I think that other people are going to offer you their suggestions as well in the chat. We're very chat positive here. So please, everybody, feel free to offer. I don't like people to, crosstalk and offer advice because it might not be welcome at all. But in the chat, then Tamara has a choice. She can read it or not as you wish. But and I think just to acknowledge sometimes situations are really just horrible, period. And when there's no exit, Pema Chodron, I don't know if it was her first book. I think her first book was Start Where You Are, but she wrote a book called The Wisdom of No Escape.
Yeah, got it.
You know it. And I think, Tamara, what she was talking about is what you did, that it drives you into your practice. It drives you, like you had to find the metta practice. And even though it was hard for you, you had to do it. And you did. And maybe you weren't connected to metta most of the time, or maybe you struggled, but of course you would struggle. Of course, it's hard. When I was in a 6-week silent retreat where I only did metta, because it was around the time I was getting divorced. So I was filled with fear, loathing, just shame, all kinds of horrible emotions. It was it was not my first marriage. And this man had adopted my daughter, whose father had died by suicide. There were just so many reasons that it was awful to have this divorce. And when it came time to offer metta to him, I could not do it. And it just felt like trying to climb. And I had all the time in the world, right? I was in a 6-week silent protected retreat. It just felt like climbing up a ladder and then just falling down again, just trying to climb. It was, but finally, because what's your choice in that situation? You keep climbing. And one time, the image I had, it was not very poetic, but when I was a kid, probably you still can't. We weren't allowed to chew gum in school. So I would have gum in my mouth and I would stick it under my desk. And then at the end of the school day, I would take that cold, hard lump of gum and put it in my mouth and chew it, and it would gradually get soft and elastic again. It didn't have any sugar in it anymore, but just it was soft and elastic again. That was the image. My heart was like that gum, and gradually, and that's the thing about practice. It involves so much patience and endurance to keep going. Dogen Zenji also had this phrase I love: patience, endurance, and the uncreate. That's what meditation practice is. And the uncreate is what hasn't happened yet, but can happen. Like, look where you are now. It looks really nice. I can't see your whole place, but where you're sitting right now looks nice. And you're smiling. So, yeah, I don't have any solution for suffering except that we have to keep going and that the practice will inevitably help.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. I'm honored that you're here. Anybody else would like to?
I'd like to share if that's okay.
Sure.
Yeah. So this week was a little bit challenging. I guess I don't know if you know, but I moved out to Monterey recently, kind of like to start this new life, right?
Told me. I think you texted me that. I didn't talk to you about it, but I think you told me.
Okay. And so I get here in December and everything's great, and then my job ends. But then I graduate from the MMTCP, so that was wonderful. And,
Congratulations, by the way.
thank you. And then I decided to. I was staying in an Airbnb, and I decided to rent it. They offered, for me to rent it. It's a really neat house. It used to be William Randolph Hearst's house, and yeah, it's really a lot of history, old Monterey, and so I'm not working, but I'm happy. I'm happy. I'm here, starting over. It's beautiful, so beautiful, and then my dog, like Friday night, just collapsed and died. And
Oh,
so I don't want to start crying.
oh, I'm so sorry, Anissa.
We have only been apart from each other like 3 times in 14 years. And now I came here to start this new life.
Mm.
And I'm sitting here in this house by myself.
Aw.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cry.
No, it's appropriate to cry. That's a huge loss. And especially scary when, when you're starting a new life and it just feels inauspicious and terrible. And I'm so, so sorry.
So I'm trying to, going through all these feelings, like, I have these experience with the program and my own practice, and there's part of me that just really wants. I just have been sending loving kindness to my dog, and a part of me that just really knows that it was her time, um and then the other part of me and just wants to just be free, just like, okay, she's free, and we had a beautiful life together, and just, and then the other part of me wants to hang on to that hurt for some reason, and I don't know why. I don't know why I want to feel bad.
Oh, can I say something about that?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, because the pain is your, I mean, it's your love. It's a tribute to the intensity of your pain, your grief, your hurt is the is actually commensurate or a tribute to the love that you had for Violet. And I think that it deserves its place. And the more you offer metta for Violet, you know, the way you're doing, Anissa, it will boomerang back to you. I promise you. It will. And and it's appropriate. I don't think it's hanging on in a I don't know, a pathological or unhealthy way. I think it's appropriate because it just happened. It's really a fresh loss. And
Yeah.
and grief takes time, and grief is so weird because sometimes you can be going along and just feeling fine, and then there'll be, a song or a smell or something just reminds you, and it's like grabs you by the ankle and pulls you under again, and it's just comes in waves like that. So
Yeah.
it hurts because it's sad, and it's okay to feel that. It really is. In
Okay.
fact, it would be weird if you didn't. It just happened, what, Friday? It's only Sunday. And it was
Yeah.
a shock. It wasn't as though Violet had cancer and you had a chance, to know that this was going to happen. And
No, and in fact, I had her in surgery just to have a lipoma taken out, a family tumor, and they did a whole body, radiographs, and just a pre-op, full health checkup, and everything came back great. And so I was so happy. And the tumor that they were taking out was just under the skin, right? So it was benign, and it was bothering her a lot. So I mean, it was a decision it was a tough decision to make because of her age, but the doctor said she was healthy and she was fine. So she went and she had the surgery, and well, the tumor on her spleen that ruptured on Friday didn't show up on the x-rays, right? Nor did the liver cancer or the stomach that had metastasized. And so I put her through this surgery, which took a recovery of 2 weeks. And we were finally, like, it was finally like I could breathe, because she didn't have a good recovery. She was not happy with the stitches and the itching, and she just didn't feel well. And finally she was feeling better. I ordered a sandwich and got in bed with her to watch, and I said, okay, it's girl time, we're gonna watch movies together. Let's just like, put that surgery behind us, and we're gonna just, it's over. We're here in Monterey. I was driving her home from the vet, and she was feeling so much better, and I looked at her and I said, girl, you own Monterey, you go, and so we were just so happy. And then sit down to watch the movies, and she just starts shaking profusely. So it was so horrible. And then, like, within an hour, or I rushed her to the emergency, and there's all these decisions to make. And I've got my family on the phone talking to the doctor with me, and all these things going on. And then all of a sudden I'm saying goodbye to her, and it was like, wait a second, we were supposed to be here together and
It's so traumatic it's so traumatic what you went through. Honestly, I want you, this, like I was saying to Tamara, I want you to do some really sweet things for yourself, and they don't have to cost a lot of money, just, it's really traumatic. And people are sending you love in the chat because that's just so traumatic. And that Violet was going to die. You did everything you could for her. And
mm-hmm,
if you feel guilty that you put her through the surgery, that's an expression of grief. I call it crooked grief when it comes out in terms of if onlys and self reproach, even self hatred sometimes, but not in your case, because you did everything for her.
mm-hmm,
She had a great life with you. And
yeah.
it's better that she died very suddenly than that she had some slow lingering thing. It's just more traumatic for you because it was a shock. And I'm glad you're here. And even if you're not moderating next week, I hope you come back. Okay.
I knew you were going to have a good message for me today. I forgot, and Alex texted me last night, and I said, oh, I know Trudy is going to have the perfect message today. And so this has been wonderful. Thank you, and thank you for sharing this with me.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing it with us and letting us know, because we can send you and Violet lots of love. And I'll see you next week.
Okay.
Okay. Oof, that was a lot. I'm so sorry, Anissa. Um, okay, Adam, hi. Adam, was your hand up by mistake?
Yes, hello. I yeah,
Oh, there you are. Hi.
good to meet y'all. This is my first time here on the Sundays. I have so much to ask. But right now I'd like to ask your thoughts. What's the purpose or the intention behind Monday through Friday, 9 to 5? I'm moving from Brooklyn to Los Angeles, and I don't know what I want to do in regards to work. I'm just curious if you have a thought on the purpose or intention of our working lives. One of the things that's going on in my head is what I've trained for is to do something like finance or business, but I don't necessarily find that to be meaningful. And I have a burning heart to do something that is kind of more overtly meaningful. Of course, I can find meaning in the finance workplace through
Sure.
processes and how I treat people. On the other hand, if I do something more overtly meaningful, I could have the story in my head that I'm kind of doing something that's meaningful. So I think the answer is some sort of balance, but I'm just wondering kind of what your perspective is. But yeah, thanks for listening.
Yeah, well, I think you have answered your question in part, but I mean, at first I was kind of laughing. I was like, I don't know, 9 to 5. I mean, I've never understood. I don't know. I don't know why. I don't know why we even have time. I mean, I guess we need it, but people used to live without it. And in the sense that, I don't know if I think it was in the 19th century, I'm not sure. But at some point, I think in the 19th century, they imposed this global system of time on all the countries and all the people, some of whom were living with a very organic sense of a very different sense of time that I would think of as more timeless. And I often joke with my husband Jack that I live in the timeless realm because I can't keep track of time or conform properly to time. It's really amazing that I get here every Sunday on time or in a minute or two of being on time. So I can't, to me, this is a completely superimposed framework that doesn't bear any relationship to, I don't know, our circadian rhythms, or I guess it's daylight at least. It bears night and day, but I can't, this is just a huge philosophical question. But to come back to you, more importantly, and your life, um, yes, I'm sure that working with finance in some way you can find meaning because everybody needs that in one way or another. Every company, every person, it's something that money's another one of those things, right? We have to have it. And so we have to deal with our finances one way or another. Um, and like you said, being kind to people in the workplace. I mean, that's what I meant by you've answered your own questions. But you need to listen to that burning heart. That's really, you need to listen, and you are listening. And that's why you're here. And that's why you're even asking to talk about it, because that burning heart is saying, I need a little more. I want my heart, speaking as, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but speaking as Adam's heart, I want to be more um, in service, like person to person, in a way that I can feel and touch and be in relationship with, instead of in my head because I attach meaning to what I'm doing. Does that make sense? And so there's lots of volunteer opportunities. I see that Bob put something in the chat. Um, I just want you, if you have a little, you must have some cushion or you wouldn't move to LA without a job, right? So
Living at my mom's. Yeah.
okay, so you have the mama cushion right now. And I bet the mama is proud of you for wanting to do something different that is gonna make you feel more related and connected to your own compassion and loving heart, right?
Hmm.
Good, good. I'm cheering you on. I'll be very interested to see what you discover. I'm also interested to see what Bob put in the chat. He put
Thank
something.
you.
Oh, he was talking about working for a nonprofit. Yeah. Oh, this is so interesting. I'm so sorry we have to stop, and I don't have time, Meredith, because I just looked at the time, speaking of tracking time, and it's 12:29. About the breakout groups, just a word to say that this is not some, oh, and thank you, Adam, to be continued. I hope you come back. Um, this is not some sociometric hot exercise. You're not being put together. It's the Zoom technology puts you in the breakout group, okay? So there's nothing personal about it except the people that you will be together with in that group. So let's just take a moment to sit together. When we come to the end of a formal period of teaching, practice, study together, it's traditional to offer the goodness of our practice. It's called dedicating the merit. We offer the goodness of our practice. And by goodness, I mean whatever we've learned, discovered, appreciated, enjoyed. we freely offer from our hearts to all beings everywhere without exception. May we and all beings deeply understand all the ways that we are connected and grow in love and wisdom. Thank you, everybody. So grateful for your presence and your practice, and look forward to seeing you next week. You can unmute, say hi, goodbye, and I'll see you next week.
Thank you, Trudy.
Thanks,
Thank
Trudy.
you, Trudy, very much.
Thanks, Trudy.
Thank you. Thank you, Trudy.
Oh, and if you're staying for the breakout group, don't turn off your Zoom, okay? Just do your bio break or whatever you need. Okay, bye.
Thanks, Trudy.
Thank you very, very much.
So we'll be back in 10 minutes, is it?
Yeah, so that yeah, about 8 minutes. 8 minutes.
8 minutes. Okay, terrific.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm so sorry about Violet, Nissa.
Oh, yeah, thanks. Pretty devastated.
Oh no. And I just want to support what reinforce what Trudy said. You know, grief it lasts as long as it lasts. It's as intense as it's gonna be. And you know, you have to surrender to it. Because fighting it will do you in, you know, feeling ashamed of it or anything. But you know, if you surrender to it like anything else you surrender to, you know, you can ride the waves, you know.
How do you like? So this morning, of course, you know, every day it's only been a couple days, but it's been different, right? The first day, I was just on the phone all day with people reaching out to support me, so I was just
Yeah.
distracted with talk and
Yeah.
and I was actually, you know, laughing about stories about her with a woman who actually gave her to me when she was one. And you know, so then the next day, and the minute I get off the phone, I'm like crying. And then the next day was, I think I talked to my mom most of the day. And I don't know, I just, I feel like, I mean, this was supposed to be like a new start. And when I got here, to be honest with you, I've been worried about her because of her, you know, she was getting older
Yeah.
and 14, you know, and what was I going to say when I said to the universe, well, God, actually, I said, God, I know this is a new start. Please don't take her from me. Because, you know, sometimes with new starts, things change. We have changes, big changes, right?
Yeah.
I was like, and so I was concerned, and then it actually happened. And I felt so bad for the surgery. But you know what? I would have done it anyway because she needed to have it done. That tumor was pressing against her stomach and making her cough. And she couldn't lay down on that side. So the emergency room doctor said it had nothing to do with it. It was a total coincidence.
Yeah.
But of course, this morning I wake up, you know, I wake in a panic, like deer in headlights wake up, right? Like, oh my gosh, okay, I'm here by myself now in this room. And I start going through my phone, looking at dates of, because she'd lost 10 pounds. And I thought, you know, that it was a good weight for her to be at. She needed to lose it. But anyway, so I start going through my phone. When did I change her food? When did I do this? When did I take her to the doctor? When did, you know, and then, oh my God, you know, Violet, forgive me for anything I was terrible as a mother, you know, and you know what I mean? Just, I don't know. What is that? And so is that not surrendering to it? That's not surrendering to it.
Well, I mean, Trudy spoke to that a little bit, but I think it's, there's, in some ways, it's resistance to the reality, which is, oh, there's something I could have done to, avoid her death. And the truth is that's almost never the case, you know?
Yeah, I mean, no, I couldn't.
Right.
She had malignant tumor on her spleen
Right.
that metastasized. I mean, yeah, there's no saving her.
I mean, I don't know, I find it hard to let myself fully feel the helplessness we feel in the face of things that happen, like that's a bad feeling,
Mhm.
and so in some ways it's comforting to think, oh, maybe there's something I could have done. I have some power here, when in fact we have no power ultimately over death. And most of the time, almost all the time, when someone dear to us dies, there's no way we can stop that. And we have to, that's one of the things in grief, I think you have to face, is in some ways your helplessness,
Yeah.
and your powerlessness. And that's a hard one to swallow. All the 12-step programs start with that. The first step is accepting that you're powerless over whatever it is,
Mhm.
and if you don't do that, it's hard to move on to anything else.
Yeah.
People don't talk about that as a spiritual practice, but I think ultimately it might be the biggest spiritual practice.
Surrendering.
Well, surrendering, acknowledging your own powerlessness, which is a kind of surrender
Oh,
to
right, yeah.
to reality. 'Cause there's
Yeah.
very little we really ultimately have much power over in our lives, right? I mean, most of it's much bigger than us, including our own bodies. We have some influence on how we take care of ourselves, but
And that,
I know people that took care of themselves beautifully and then, got pancreatic cancer and gone in 2 months, out of nowhere, and they
Mhm.
were healthy people.
that feeling of helplessness and vulnerability is also like what makes something traumatic. It's like it's one of the most horrible feelings.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
and the process is so painful while it's painful, and no one else gets to vote on how much or how long, or when the feelings are supposed to shift or whatever. They just do what they do.
Yeah, she brought me such joy, like I got to give love and I got to receive love and I got to laugh every day. The days that were horrible, I laughed still because of, her. We were just so close, and I can't even describe it. Anyway, yeah, so I don't know what to do with myself. And that's probably normal too, right?
Well, it's hard when all the calls stop coming. And all of a sudden, in the beginning, people rally around, or come to see
Yeah.
you, bring food, do all of those things. And then there's a day where everybody goes back to their lives and you're there by yourself with it. That's true of any kind of loss. I've heard that from people who, had divorce, or their kids leave for college and they don't have a partner, or someone, their spouse
Yeah.
dies. And they talk about that empty house, and it's excruciating once that starts. And you're kind of right there, I guess.
Yeah, it was terrible coming home, from the hospital. That evening, I went and sat in a parking lot for an hour and called a couple of people in my family, I think, and then I went to a restaurant, and then actually drove to a motel and was going to get a room because I didn't want to go home. And then I said, doesn't feel right. So then I went home and just walking in the door, and I started making her food because she had a tummy problem. So I started making her food, and I bought an Instapot, and the Instapot was like staring at me when I walked in, and I was like, oh my gosh, I have all of her food in the refrigerator. It's just that whole process. And I was afraid this morning that I would lose my happiness forever. and I wouldn't be able to get it back because I had so much happiness with her.
Mhm.
And it's been so challenging, the last few years and stuff. So I was like, I don't want to change as a person. I liked that happy feeling, I don't know. I just wish I could have one more day, but it was just so sudden. I think I'm still processing that. I really don't know. It's like every minute is different.
Mhm.
I mean, it was just Friday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the happiness, you just have to ride the grief for a while, and the happiness will come back.
Will it?
Yeah. Oh yeah, you'll find you'll get another pet, or you'll find other ways to, occasion your happiness, but when grief's happening, it's really hard to be happy, especially in the beginning.
Mhm.
I found there's a lot of good grief meditations on the Insight Timer app if you have that on your phone. There's some very good ones. Yeah.
I do, yeah. And it's funny, it opened up by itself. Well, I probably touched it or whatever, and it opened up to this video about, I don't remember what it was, but it was so appropriate. It's right there. So I saved that. But yeah, I'll take a look at that. I definitely will. I don't feel like even looking for a job now, even though I really need to.
Mhm.
I just don't understand. I just feel so like, what's the right word?
Shock.
Well, I guess this is all normal.
Disoriented.
You're stunned.
Mhm.
Yeah, I feel like I want to. Okay, I want to drive to my parents' house, right? They want me to go visit and stay a couple weeks. I can still look for a job there, and it's not and then I could be around them and their dogs and stuff, and that would probably be good to be surrounded by people I know because I don't know anybody here.
Mhm.
Yep.
Yes, that's a good idea. And be
Sounds like a
around
good idea.
dogs.
Yeah, because
Mhm.
I thought, I thought, oh, the minute I just being alone, I started looking at dogs and I thought, what? No, this is not right. And I don't want a dog right now. I want somebody to loan me one, but I don't want,
Mhm.
and, I'm not ready for that. So
It's like you need some comfort, lots of comfort. I
yeah,
mean, yeah. I lost my cat. This is Meredith. I don't know you. I haven't met you.
Mhm.
I lost my cat when I finally moved to a place with roommates that I get along with, and it had been years since that had happened, and there was a lot of inner work on my part for it to occur. And these people are just so in love with animals. And I have a cat, had a cat, and I'm thinking, finally, I've moved somewhere where, not only is he acceptable, but he's very welcome.
Mhm.
About a month into living here, he died.
Mhm.
oh,
And we'd been together for 17 years.
oh my gosh.
Right. And it's very helpful for me to listen to you. I have trouble crying.
Mhm.
But what came to mind is how clear it was to me and still is, and I miss him absolutely sorely. I mean, I'll still wake up at night and think I see him on my bed. But
Oh, boy.
oh yeah, sure. And the 17 years were enormously difficult, healing time. How do I say? Anyway, I'll leave it there. But
No, I understand. I feel the same way.
I just want to say, when he left, needed to go, it is clear to me that he had carried with me, for me,
Mhm.